July 28th, 2013. Much better day. Early this morning, I biked into a small town of yurts to get supplies. People were only just waking up, and no one was outside. I went up and down the few dirt streets looking for a market. A dog started following me, then another. Big mongrel guard dogs. They kept their distance, but started yipping, which drew the attention of more dogs. By the end of the next street, 6 of them were on my tail, working themselves into a fervor. I picked up my pace as I started moving in, then took off at a sprint as the first one bit my trailer. My heavy bike slammed over the rutted and rocky ground. I knew there was no way I would be able to outrun them. I pointed towards the edge of town, and just beyond the last yurt, I looked back to see the dogs begin to fight among themselves, barking viciously and jumping at each other. In their moment of distraction, I got far enough away that they lost interest. All 6 dogs trotted back home. My adrenaline was still pumping hard, and I charged up the long hill out of town. A Russian man on a touring motorcycle, coming from the other direction, stopped to talk to me. He had been in Mongolia for a few weeks and was on his way back home. In a few hours, he expected to be at the border, where I was 3 days ago. The man spoke English well, and as we chatted, he had the divine intuition to offer me his map. The exact thing I needed. He handed me photocopies that covered all of Mongolia and kept only the page that would take him to the border. The map even had enough detail to show the track we were on right then. On my digital map, the closest road was 20 miles away. I felt a wave of relief to know where I was again. I reached the top of the hill at the same time as a van full of Mongolian college students from Ulaanbaatar. They were out on a week-long field trip and gave me a Mongolian beer that I packed away for later. One of them spoke English and pointed out a 6-foot-wide ring of stones circling a large central pile. She explained that we were looking at the 1,000-year-old grave of an ice queen, but she didn't say what an ice queen was. Other ring graves had knee-high stone figures for headstones. The carvings were rudimentary, and the details had weathered away long ago. As I was going down the hill, I met a Chinese cyclotourist pushing his bike up. He's from Beijing and started his trip 18 days ago in Ulaanbaatar. I felt greatly relieved to hear this. After yesterday, I thought I would need a month to get that far. The other guy had more immediate concerns. He had been pushing uphill for an hour and wondered when he would reach the top. I told him he'd be pushing for 2 more hours at least. As encouragement, I said there would be a pile of rocks to look at when he got there. The way down from the pass was very steep and covered with loose gravel. I crept along at a walking pace, though my brakes were barely up to the task of slowing me. I squeezed them so hard and for so long that my hands cramped from exhaustion, and several times I had to pause to let them rest. I knew that if I lost control of my speed, even for a moment, wrecking would be the only way to stop. I hadn't yet reached the bottom of the hill when a pickup truck stopped with 3 men in the cab. The driver was a large Mongolian man who spoke English well. He was a mining engineer and had earned a degree at the University of Idaho. He handed me a bottle of water, and we talked while I drank. The 2 other men in the truck were ridiculously drunk. The man in the middle was poking the engineer's belly. He tried ignoring him and slapped his hand away. The drunk guys were giggling, and the engineer was trying not to laugh. The guy was being pretty funny. I asked the engineer who they were, and he said they were his co-workers. In the late afternoon, I followed a narrow road up a gnarled low mountain. The top was mostly flat, and a couple on touring motorcycles caught me there, John and Anna from Romania. They were fluent in English, and while we were chatting, other people started to arrive. The first to stop were 3 Mongolian men on motorcycles. They were in a warm mood. One of them had a plastic bottle with clear liquid that he offered to us. I held the drink to my nose and smelled the alcohol. Teasing him, I asked if it was a bottle of water. He laughed and said, "Water is like drinking poison." Another car arrived with 5 people, and some of them had been drinking too. A minute later, 3 more men pulled up in a small car, and suddenly, a party had coalesced. At the urging of his friend, one of the men performed a folk song using the deep, reverberating technique of Mongolian throat singing. Everyone was jolly and having a fun moment together. Then, after 10 minutes, the whole group dispersed. I agreed to meet John and Anna 10 kilometers farther down the road. I told them to pick a spot, then look for me in an hour. Along the way, a Land Cruiser passed me as I slowly climbed a hill. The SUV stopped 50 meters ahead of me, and I watched 21 people climb out of the 5-seat vehicle. They gathered along the edge of the road to watch as I slowly struggled past them. A few people cheered me on. They all looked happy to be stretching their legs. When they drove past me a second time, I saw that they were sitting 4 high on each other's laps. Shortly after, I met a delightful husband and wife driving home. The wife gestured to somewhere over the hill. They gave me a bottle of hydration drink. I was out of water, so I was happy for the fluids. I quickly finished the bottle, which prompted them to go into their trucks to get me a cucumber and a chunk of lunch meat. I thanked them, then they went back to their truck one final time for a bottle of vodka. They only had 2 glasses, so I drank a shot with each of them. When they offered me more, I held my hands up. I got them laughing when I mimed that I would fall off my bike. I found John and Anna getting their tent set up next to a group of 3 yurts. They had needed water too, and when they stopped to ask for some, the grandmother invited them to stay. This place is beautiful. There is a wide open view of the grass-covered hills and the big sky above. Rainbows dance beneath clouds throughout the evening. Now, the stars are coming out, and goats are murmuring in the darkness. A big scruffy dog is running into the night, barking with excitement. Most nights I'm alone, so seeing the guard dog working so hard makes me wonder if there are things out there I need to be worried about.